Some leaders leave footprints, others leave libraries. You're tuning into the Authors on Mission podcast, where industry giants become literacy legends. In every episode, we talk with authors who turn their brilliance into books that transform lives. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. Welcome to your authorship experience. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Authors on Mission podcast. So, what if I told you that everything you think you know about getting older is based on outdated information? That the story our culture tells us about aging is not just wrong, but actively harmful? Well, on today's episode of Authors on Mission, we're going to be talking about the rules of rewriting entire industries. We're exploring a revolutionary idea that can completely transform how you view your future. Our guest today is Dr. Corinne Auman, a psychologist who looked at the demographic reality of our time, where people regularly live 30 years longer than previous generations, and realized that we're using a completely obsolete playbook for aging. Her book, Keenagers, Telling a New Story About Aging, doesn't just challenge ageism, it demolishes the entire framework we use to think about life after 55. So, more so than an academic theorist, she's also the CEO of Choice Care Navigators, working daily with families, navigating the aging process, and what she's discovered will make you rethink not just your golden years, but how you're living right now. So whether you're 25 or 75, this conversation is about to change how you see your future. We're going to dive right in. Welcome, Dr. Corinne Auman.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. I'm really excited to chat about this one, and you're completely right with everything that you're advocating for today. The reality has changed over the years. People are living longer, demographics are changing, so there's much more out there for us to learn about and see. So I think it's very, very revolutionary what you're doing here.
Oh, thanks.
So I'm curious to know, is there any personal experience or moment that led you to dedicate your career to changing how we think about aging?
I don't know that there's a particular moment. I got interested in working with older adults because I loved my grandparents. And I think a lot of people who work with older adults today have that kind of experience where they had someone in their life that really mattered to them, that they loved and had great interactions with. And they thought, I really want to go work with this age group. So that relationship is kind of what got me started down this path. I think today, with trying to kind of change the narrative around aging, that has been a process that has occurred for me over the course of my time as a care manager. So I've been working in care management for about 13 years now. And one of the things I really realized when I started my business was how wrong I was about who I was going to work with. Mm-hmm. So when I started the business, I thought I was going to work with 40-year-olds who were caring for 70-year-old parents. And what I actually do is work with a lot of 70-year-olds who are caring for their 90-something-year-old parents. And so my own perceptions of what it was like to be an older adult, who was the caregiver, who was the care recipient, were really wrong. And I have seen that over and over and over again over the course of this, decade plus working in care management. And if I'm wrong, and I have all this training in working with older adults, right? That's my academic background. If I was that wrong about what it was like, then I think a lot of other people have the narrative wrong too, because it's not your parents, your grandparents' older adulthood anymore. It's very different. We have a lot more longevity. We're living a lot longer. We're living a lot healthier. And we really have to take a new look at it to say, okay, what is older adulthood now? And how should I be planning and preparing for it?
Right. Well, that's really interesting to know that you yourself were surprised by the demographics as you got into it, even after all the training, like you said. So it's remarkable that you were able to take that and you took a real need that people need to have and understand, right? People don't understand this. You put it into a book so that they can better grasp it. It just makes so much sense that you're able to do that for others. So I'm wondering, has your perspective on aging evolved throughout your career beyond that? I mean, of course, you probably had to adapt your practices and your methods based on that. Would you say so, or maybe not? What do you
Yeah,
think?
no, absolutely. If you're going into any kind of business, you have to think about who's your target audience. And I really had to shift who I thought my target audience was going to be into who it actually was. The other piece of it that has really shaped over time, especially in care management, I see the power of preparing for your retirement years. I think we spend a lot of time in our culture talking about financial planning for retirement years, and that is very important. Nobody is arguing that that isn't important. But what we don't do is talk about all the other pieces of those retirement years that are also equally important.
Right.
You retire, and how are you going to get your socialization? How are you going to get your intellectual stimulation? How are you going to get spiritual connection? How are you going to stay physically active? Because there's so many pieces of our life that really revolve around work. A lot of people get their socialization through work. They get their intellectual stimulation through work. And so when you retire, when you withdraw from that work, where are those things going to come from? And I don't think we even consider it until it applies to us, until we get in that moment
Mhm.
as an older person and we go, oh, well, what am I going to do now? Because, when in the 1930s, when Social Security was first put into place, we expected you to live a couple of years on Social Security. The lifespan was about 67. Today, the average lifespan is like 76, 77. So you're looking at least a decade, and we've got more and more people living into their 80s, 90s, and above. We have more centenarians, people living to 100, than we've ever had. So we need to plan and think about those decades of life that we have now and be thinking about, what do I want to do with that time? Who am I going to be now? Instead of just thinking, oh, I'm going to retire and it's going to be bliss and it's going to be wonderful, and not actually planning for what's going to make me feel like getting out of bed on Wednesday morning. What's going to inspire me and motivate me and give me purpose in my life? Because we are not good. Humans are not good when we don't have any sort of purpose or meaning
Right.
going on. And so, and it's not that you have to go back to work, but whatever you want to do, maybe you want to start your own business. Maybe you want to spend time with your grandkids. Maybe you want to volunteer, whatever it is. But who are you going to be now? Not just, I'm sure it'll work itself out, right? I'm going to
Mhm.
go on vacation and enjoy myself, and then everything else will be fine.
Right. But then, of course, that's not sustainable. You're not going to be on vacation every day for the rest of your life. I mean, that's a mentality. You feel like you might be on vacation, but you need a little bit of a purpose, something to challenge yourself, and something to get out of bed in the morning, like you mentioned. So I understand
Well,
what you mean completely.
and like your brain is a use it or lose it organ. It
Mhm.
needs challenge, it needs intellectual stimulation. So, do the thing that you've always wanted to do but never had time. Learn to play the guitar, do something, but you've got to challenge yourself, because otherwise your brain it does not want to sit around and do nothing.
Right, exactly, exactly. Well, transitioning this into the book itself, which, of course, is directly involved with what we were just mentioning, that, things are changing. But also, one big aspect of your book is the problem that we lump everyone together if they're over 65 sometimes, but it's more to that. There's lots of different categories that we should be considering, specifically the Keenagers, as you term them. So, everyone, if you explain a little bit about that for us.
Sure. So I use the term Keenager, and that's with a K. I like it for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's kind of a play on teenager, right? But it's also the definition of keen is highly developed. Older adults are highly developed. Also, having like a significant interest in something, being keen on something, like
Right.
means having a real interest in life or an activity or a passion, whatever it is, you're keen on something. So I think that really describes a lot of our older adults today, particularly the one, our kind of, I'll say, younger segment of our older adults, people in their 60s, 70s, who are often still active, working, volunteering, doing a lot of things. They're keen to stay engaged with life they're not ready to retire and withdraw and stop participating in life. So one of the points I make in the book is that we don't have good words for older adults just in general. We basically say once you get to 65, everybody over 65 is considered an older adult. And so if you're 65, you're an older adult. If you're 95, you're an older adult.
Mhm.
And there is no other time in life when we would take people who were 30 or 30 plus years apart and go, you two are basically the same, right? That would be like telling a 12-year-old and a 42-year-old, you two are basically the same. There is a lot of development and change that continues to happen in those years, and we really need to try to talk about people in different ways, right? Instead of just kind of grouping everybody into this lump of older adult. And the other thing is, we need positive words. If you just kind of Google synonyms for older adult, most of the words are negative. It's codger, old coot, hag. I mean, it's not good. It's not words people want to be called. And so a few of them are neutral, like older adults kind of neutral. Maybe elder is positive. Some communities see elder as very positive. But it's very difficult to find positive words to talk about older adulthood. And so, Keenager is kind of my effort to have a word that has a positive connotation to it to talk about this stage of life.
Yeah, I like that word a lot, because everyone wants to be a teenager, right? But it's a new it's a new play on it. And, by being keen, it kind of plays into what you're saying before about the mental stimulation. You're keen on an activity you like to do or a hobby or an interest or whatever it might be. So it really is pretty brilliant that you've, been advocating for that. So I'm wondering, you have this book out, you have very powerful examples from many different licensed people in the field, Dr. Rebecca Adams, Shane Hunt, Francis Hall. It's very credible, is what I'm trying to say. So have you seen a lot of positive reception to it? People kind of changing their viewpoints in this subject?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've had a lot of feedback and I'm starting to work on my next book already because I've had a lot of feedback where people said, I get it. I see what you're saying. I definitely want to have a positive outlook on my aging experience. I want to take steps now to plan and prepare and make sure it's going to go really well for me.
Right.
Now, how do I do it? So the next thing is going to be the kind of how to be a Keenager, workbook, planning session, that sort of thing. Like I said, I'm just starting to work on that, but that's really great. I mean, it's really great that people have read the book and they want more and they understand the message, they feel impacted by it, and then they say, okay, now tell me what to do to make this actually happen.
Yeah. Understood. I get that's something that all nonfiction books really should have, right? There's something to take what you're saying and move it a step forward.
Yeah.
So it's good to know that you're doing that, right? That you're putting that into the practice. So kind of branching off that though, what you said you're working on it. Is there a certain time we could be looking forward to see how, or maybe it's in the beginning stages?
It's in the beginning stages.
Okay.
I think my goal would be next summer to have it finished because literally I am in the very beginning. I just did my first, because I'm going to do interviews again with people to kind of give very specific examples of spiritual development, intellectual, how people, so that you can have role models, right? Have people who are doing these things. And I just did my first interview here last week. So we're going, but it's a little bit away.
Right. Understood. Okay. Well, it's good to know that you have that on the horizon. It's in the works. That's wonderful. And this book too it's great. It's good. It's good that lots of people are, changing their perspectives of it. It's good to know that you've had that reception. But, kind of transitioning into the writing process itself, for all of, writers out there today who might also be wanting to write about a new type of topic, changing perspectives and mindsets, what challenges did you face in writing this book and articulating what you have to say in a way that's convincing, but not too preachy, but also engaging? What kind of methods did you use as writing it?
Well, I'll say a couple of things there. Number one, I think it's really important to understand, especially I feel a lot more confident going into my second book now that I've done one. But the first time I had a coach working with me who was very clear that when I was writing my first draft, he repeatedly called it my shitty first draft, pardon
Oh,
my language. But he what he was trying to do was to say, you have to write. We can edit anything, but what we can't edit is a blank page. So
right.
you've got to write, and it's going to feel like it's really terrible, and that's okay. But you got to put it out, get it out, and then we can work on editing it and cleaning and doing different things. And that really helped me so much, because one of my stumbling blocks, I'll say, is perfectionism, in the sense that, I might write something, but then I want to go back and like edit that and, really get it polished. You can spend so much time doing that and never really move forward in the book writing process. So having somebody who basically every week was saying, what did you write? What did you write? What did you write? And no, we're not going to edit any of it until we pretty much have it all out, and then we'll circle back to the editing. So I think that was super, super helpful to me. The accountability of having a coach as well was really helpful, because I needed somebody to hold my feet to the fire in terms of, let's get this done. The interesting thing, like I think you asked about, like the, writing a book, trying to change people's minds and do what my goal ended up being. I'm not sure I was entirely clear when I first started writing how the book was going to shape up. I think when I first started, I thought I was going to write a book more focused on care management and kind of what you needed to do to prepare, in terms of what a care manager might tell you to do to prepare for a good experience as you age. But the farther I got into it, the more I realized that your outlook and your perspective, that the people who were doing the right things to prepare were the people who had a positive outlook on their aging experience. They were the ones who were looking forward to these years. And so they wanted to plan for them and prepare for them, because they were thinking, ooh, some of my best years are ahead of me. When we have a very negative outlook, those are the people who kind of bury their head in the sand and go, I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to plan for it.
Right.
I'm just going to die warm in my bed. Nothing bad is ever going to happen. And that fear of aging is actually what keeps people a lot of times from having a great experience, because it keeps them from planning and preparing. And so I think once I got into writing the book, I realized that it wasn't just going to be like here's a care management sort of thing, because what you're thinking in your own head actually shapes the experience so much that that's actually the more important thing. That perspective that you have on these years. Are you looking forward to them? Are you dreading them? Are you terrified? That actually shapes so much of the experience. And I see that play out all the time in my care management practice.
Understood. Well, it definitely seems like you went on quite a journey to, getting this book out there. And I want to kind of back up a little bit and say that you did have the editors to push you along the way and, work those original drafts into something more, enhancing it as you went throughout the process. And you do have a very good grasp on your audience too, realizing that it's the people who have it in a positive light that are able to make the changes. So a big part of it does seem to be putting a positive spin on it so people can make these plans.
Yeah. The other thing I think you asked that I forgot to answer was about like structure and
Yes.
reaching people. I knew I wanted to do interviews, because I think that, you want case study kinds of things to kind of talk to people, to give people examples. I really wanted the book to be readable. It's not super, super long. It's what I might call a beach read. It's not a romance novel or anything, but it's something you could take to the beach and read in an afternoon. Because I want to get the message to people without being preachy and without making it super heavy, right? Like I don't, there is research in there, but it's not a research book. And I want it to be something that can get through to people and make them think without being something that they pick up the book and they go, oh man, this is like a textbook kind of thing.
Understood. Yeah, definitely. And that's something you always have to think about when you're writing too, exactly how with the tone and how it's going to come across.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so branching onto this, a lot of the book does also involve real people and interviews, which you kind of talked about before. I'm wondering what that process was like to you too. That's something that a lot of authors could learn from and gain insights from if your process for that as well.
I think the interviews are actually the most fun because you get to talk to people who are doing really interesting things and kind of become like your mentors in terms of, what the possibilities are out there for your future life. I also, just really enjoyed talking to people. So the interviews for me, the hardest thing is finding the person you want to interview, like who's going to fit kind of what you're talking about. So finding that individual, and then of course getting them to sit down and talk to you because, hey, I'm writing a book, don't you want to be in it? But I don't think I've had anybody say no. Like if I kind of explain, hey, this is what it's going to be and this is what we're talking about, nobody turned me down in the process. But if they had, that would have been fine. But the interviews are really fun because then you get to, and I always, ask to record them so that you don't have to like sit there and take notes the whole time. You can have the recording and you can go back and especially now that you have like note takers that
Oh,
they
yeah.
can kind of summarize things for you to the key points. That's really super helpful. So you can just sit down and have a conversation with someone. You don't have to like have a script or take, copious notes in order to remember what everybody said.
Understood. Right. And those tools are so useful. I mean, we're using a note taker right now to transcribe our conversation. I use it all the time with my own clients for ghostwriting and editing. It's so useful. That's a great tip that any author should be using, right? Is these new technologies and using it to our advantage. It's great. I'm glad you had a lot of fun with the interviews too. It must be great meeting new people. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
do you have a particular example of an interview that you'd like to share with us today? Maybe
Um,
one of your favorite.
well, actually, I mean, this is one for the new book. It's the one I just did, so that's the one that's fresh in my mind, and I'm really excited about that because in the next book, I'm going to be talking about all these different aspects that you need to plan for besides just your finances. And I just interviewed a lady who she just retired, and she has moved to a new city and she's kind of gone back to school to become a spiritual director, which is like it's kind of like a therapist but for your spiritual journey, right? So you talk to them about like what you think and how you feel, and they don't tell you what to think or feel, but they give you like guidance and they ask questions and things like that. And she's so interesting because number one, okay, she just retired, and we think about you retire and yeah, you go on vacation and you do all these pleasure activities, and she's training to become a spiritual advisor. She just moved to a new city and a new house. Her husband and she are being very cognizant about making dates or dinner plans with people in the new community because she understands how important socialization is and how much community support is going to matter in her aging journey, right? Like she needs to know people, she needs to have friends and neighbors. And so they're making this very concerted effort to get out and know people and these kinds of things. And I just love her because I'm like, that is exactly what she's doing, everything right, in terms of she's thinking about her social connection. She's thinking about her intellectual stimulation. I want to learn a new skill. I want to do a new thing. She's also thinking this is something I could do part-time for years, right? Like I just retired from my full-time work. I don't want to do that anymore, but I could continue on with this part-time work for the next however many decades, because it's not, I can sit in my chair and do it. I can be on Zoom and do it. So I just love that because I was like, you are going to be my favorite new example of what people are doing and what they can do when they are, planning and thinking, because they had been preparing for over a year prior to her retirement for what they were going to do and where they were going to move and, what the next things were going to be.
Right, right. Well, that's really inspiring. It's great to know that you have those connections and also just, points of reference and, things that drive your passion even more so by talking to these people and learning more
Mm-hmm.
from them. So that's really cool.
Well, here's the thing too, like we are all, if you're not already in your Keenagerhood, right? Then you are a Keenager in training, right? So this
Okay.
is it's as much my journey as it is everybody else's because I'm, talking to these folks and thinking about these things going, how can I make this a great experience? And, doing that makes me really excited about what's ahead of me, right? Like I'm not looking at the decades ahead of me and going, oh, it's all downhill from here. It's all almost, I'm looking at these going, oh, this is going to be fun. Like, let's do this.
Right, exactly. Well, that's awesome. So as we begin to sort of cycle into the ending part of our podcast today, I'm wondering if you happen to know any other writing tips to offer to aspiring authors out there. Maybe people who are kind of following your footsteps or inspired by what you're doing today. What guidance might you have to offer them if they're also trying to revolutionize a certain topic or field, just like you have in terms of writing?
There was a great, and I don't remember who said this to me. So I have it on my bulletin board here behind my computer. But writing is the process of realizing that you don't know what you're talking about. And so I really feel that because, like I said, I went into it thinking I was going to write one book. And then in the process of writing, it morphed into something else and something that I love actually so much more than what my original idea was going to be. So I think the message there is just start writing, right? Like have a goal. My goal was usually like 1,000. If I sat down to write, my goal was usually 1,000 words. But like have a goal of like what you want to, and then just do it, right? And don't edit it. Again, make it understand that it's going to be a shitty first draft, and
Yes.
but just get it out. And I think that is incredibly powerful because again, you will start writing things and there will be things that you write that you hate and that will end up on the cutting room floor and you will never look at again. But that's okay. You just have to start writing.
Just have to start. Yeah, exactly. I always like to say that, you get your first draft out there. It could be terrible, but that's the starting point, just
You can edit anything, but you can't edit a blank page.
exactly. Words of wisdom from your editor.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's perfect. That's wonderful. So Corinne, if people do want to, stay up to date and get in touch, what's the best way to do so? How can we reach out and stay connected, especially with this upcoming book?
Sure. So my website is just my name. So it's CorinneAuman.com. And there you can find links to the book, information about me, podcast links, all those things.
Perfect. Well, we'll put the link of that in the description box of this podcast today. So if you're inspired today, everybody, go ahead and click on over. And of course, check out the book Keenagers, a perfect way for us to get a good understanding of this new mindset, this new way to see aging and everything. It's very eye-opening. So I really appreciate you coming on today and showing us this new perspective. Now that they've learned a little bit about this, what's one thing you want them to remember and keep in mind as they move on from this podcast today?
Just in terms of your aging experience, ageism is real, and the number one place you're going to fight it is in your own head. So when you start like thinking things like, oh, I'm too old to wear that, or, oh, I need to color my gray hair, or whatever it is, if you want to color your gray hair, great, that's totally fine. But it's just starting to think, why do I think the things that I do? Why do I say the things that I do? And is it true, right? Is it true? Because our culture has fed us so many negative stereotypes that it's easy to just kind of buy into them. And the number one thing I want people to do is start questioning that and going, is that true about aging today? Could that be different for me? Why do I think the things I do?
Okay, yeah, so kind of some introspective pointers there, right? To think about why do I think the way I do, and going from there, that's how they can best implement everything that Keenagers is advocating for.
That's exactly right.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Well, to everybody listening today, Dr. Auman has given us a really great masterclass in challenging assumptions and rewriting limiting narratives. So whether you're also an aspiring author looking to tackle some of the issues out there, or if you're somebody who just wants to approach your own aging with intention and excitement, I think this teenager mindset's a real game changer. It's something that we should all be thinking about and considering as we go forward with our lives. So yeah, remember everybody to check out the book. Dr. Auman's message is incredible. Hopefully it inspires you also to start writing your own story starting today. So thank you so much for joining us, everyone, on Authors on Mission podcast, where we prove that the most successful authors aren't just telling stories, they're changing the world one page at a time. So until next time, keep writing, keep inspiring, and stay on your mission. We'll see you next time, everyone.
This is Danielle Hutchinson reminding you that somewhere, someone needs the book that only you can write. Visit authorsonmission.com to start your legacy. Until next time, keep leading, keep inspiring, and keep thinking in chapters. Have a great day.